Hi, everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to the last day of our Compliance and Ethics Week for 2023. Today we have Jess Norrell with us. She is the owner of Mosen Solutions. With 20 years of healthcare experience, Jessica is all about helping healthcare practices thrive with strategic business solutions. She began working in orthotics and prosthetics 20 years ago as an assistant in her uncle's O&P practice. Inspired by the prospect of helping people get out of pain and back to their activities of daily living, she pursued a career in O&P. She completed a bachelor's of applied science in O&P and became a certified prosthetist orthotist. And after gaining experience as a clinician, she received her MBA from William & Mary and began working in healthcare information technology. And after several years in IT, she then founded Mosen. So she's here today to talk to us about what we learned this week and apply it to our practice. So with that, I will turn it over to Jess.
Hey friends, thank you for that, Joy, and happy Cinco de Mayo and the last day of the week. So why are we here today? Let me get my slide going here. Okay, so my role in our education week this week was to kind of wrap up the ideas that were presented this week and help you guys put ideas into action. Because I don't know about you guys, but going to any meeting, conference, or otherwise, like you get inundated with all these amazing ideas. And then you're gonna get stuck in the rabbit wheel of like, what do I do first? What do I do next? Like, how do I put this in action? We have patients to take care of, we have a business to run, and we have all these special projects. Where do we go next? And so hopefully after this, you guys, one will be like, okay, we have a lot of cool projects. Let's map them out and figure out where they fit into our practice. But before you do that, I'm actually going to give you one more bit of homework for the week before you start implementing projects in your practice, okay? So the reason why we're here is, one, we've had a fantastic week of education. Thank you to AOPA for bringing together O&P Insight, KG Simple Solutions, and my company, Mosen. It's really cool that, one, they offered this to us, and two, like just the impact that we can have in helping to elevate the profession. Like everything we're talking about here is really not just to help your business, but really to drive excellence in the profession. And we're hopeful that some of these tools and tips and tricks that we're passing along will do just that, really. So before I get to project planning, I'm going to talk to you about why it's important to map your processes and how to map your processes. And I'll tell you why in just a second. And then we'll get to closing thoughts, Q&A, and we have a speaker wrap up at the end where you can ask me, Kelly, Michelle, or the AOPA committee any questions that you may have about what's going on. So why am I talking about process? Well, everything that you guys heard this week lives within your process. And your process in your business is part of your G&A budget, which is your general and administrative expenses. And AOPA does really cool studies about expenses and practices. And according to some of the studies they've done, 35 to 50% of your budget lives in your G&A expense. So when you're creating new projects or changing your process or adding team members or building your business, that's in that budget. So as you can imagine, if you have any inefficiencies, 50% of your budget being inefficient is really, really bad. I mean, like, I don't know about you, but my chest hurts a little bit just saying that out loud. So before you take all these awesome ideas that you heard this week, you need to make sure that your process is straight before you start putting a Band-Aid over top of what you already have, right? So other few stats here. Studies have shown that hospitals waste 12 billion per year on poor communication alone. So why does that matter to us? One, we're not a hospital, right? But we are part of the healthcare profession. And if we niche that down just a little bit, even if O&P is wasting 1 million per year on poor communication, that impacts a lot. So why are we talking about poor communication? Again, where does communication impact our business and our process? You see where I'm heading here? So let's talk about how we tend to view our processes. We kind of tend to view them, I think we've all started shifting towards this patient-centric ideal of what our processes revolve around, right? And we have an admin team, which we've kind of put our billing team in there. Then we have our clinical team and we have our fab team. And we tend to view our process kind of in these buckets. And sometimes our process overlaps and sometimes our process is linear, right? I'm going to show you a linear process in a minute, but that linear process has overlap even with our teams. So this is really what our process looks like. And if we took a bigger circle around this whole part of our business here, it would be our business, right? And underneath that business umbrella, we'd have marketing, referral source communications, taxes, payroll, all that fun stuff. But as it relates to like day-to-day interactions with the patient, these are the teams that are really touching that patient. And we could add other bubbles on here, right? We could split billing into two teams and have like RCM1 and RCM2 team. We could have an inventory team on this. Our clinical team could be certified clinicians and residents and fitters. Like this could get really, really complicated quick, but it's just a visual of how much we overlap. And it's not, oh, admin does this, then it hands off to clinical, then it hands off to fab, then it does this. There is constant overlap in the process. So again, when you go to document your process, it will look like a linear thing, but remember, we all have overlap in each other's roles, okay? So why are we doing this? We need to remove the ambiguity of our process. And again, you heard a lot of great ideas this week on creating billing checklists, insurance details, creating like a compliance team, understanding coding in your office. Well, if you just focused on those little snippets of your process, you don't know how you're impacting one team downhill or uphill from there. So we're creating this so that we understand how it impacts our whole entire team and ultimately how it impacts our business, right? So you're like, okay, how do I begin with this? Like, where do I begin? And most practices that I've worked with, they do one thing and they'll start with the referral source or the referral that they get, and they'll document it up till delivery, right? Well, I'm going to show you in a minute why we want to keep going past that, but I'll show you how we begin this. So the first thing you're going to do is document your current workflow. My example is going to show you a claim from data entry to claim resolved. But let's say you want to, I don't know, you want to buy a carver for your office. Maybe referral entry to claim resolved is not the process we're going to document to put a carver in our office. It's maybe from when the work order is generated until the device is handed off to the practitioner for fitting. So we can narrow that scope down a little bit. But you want to look at whatever the process is or the workflow through the lens of the goal that you're trying to reach. So to define a process, it doesn't matter what it is, you need to know your teams and you need to know your core processes. When I talk about core process, I mean, and again, in the scope of like a referral to claim resolved, we're talking about first contact with a patient, initial eval, behind the scenes admin process, fabrication, like those are our big core processes. And then underneath that, we have tasks that go underneath those core processes. And here's the last two steps where I see folks kind of skipping over because we get inundated with the process, right? Listing your inputs. If you have somebody in your office that comes to you and says, hey, I think we need this high-tech printer that can scan and I don't know, digital thing, like it can do 10 things in one. I want you to list all the tools that you currently use before we buy this $5,000 equipment, because I bet we're going to have redundancy when we do that. So before you buy something, this is a really great practice, not only for you as a business owner or as a team member to see what you're using and where, but where's that new technology or that new person that you're advocating to fill a team spot in? Where are they going to fit in? And then next, list the pain points. The pain points, hint here, are your project. All right, and we'll get to that. So the first thing you're going to do is document your current workflow, and you're just going to see what that baseline looks like for your business. You are not solving all the world's problems when you document that workflow, okay? That's another thing I see folks spinning into, and that's why this week or meetings, AOPA meetings in general, like you hear these great ideas and you go back and you take it and put it into action right away without knowing where everything is in your process. And we're well intended when we do that, right? Because we just see these great things and we know they're going to help our practice, but then it becomes another problem somewhere in our process because we didn't figure out where it impacted other people. So this is how I've done it with a couple of our clients, and I honestly have thoroughly enjoyed watching these teams work together to do it. So what I do is when I come on site, I actually have the process already documented out. So owners, you could do this if you wanted to. I have it documented, I shuffle them up, and then I divide the business into separate teams. It could be 2 or 3 teams. And so those teams work together for 30 minutes to document the process as they know it. And what's really cool is when they come back, I've got 2 or 3 different versions of their process as they think they know it. And so then we get to work together as a team to redefine the process that they want to follow and put it into action. What this does is it gets your teams talking about their various pain points. Clinicians, we love them dearly, but they are generally tunnel vision on codes, notes, and ordering and fabrication. Like that is their role. Admin, they are data entry, paperwork, etc. Like everybody has their silo. And so when we try to break down that silo just to open up what everybody's doing and when, it creates a lot of aha moments for the team and a lot of empathy and compassion for what other teams are going through. When we talk about pain points, and we get to talk about it in the context of the core process and not the person, it brings, again, a lot of empathy to the situation. So in our day-to-day workflow, you guys as owners and leaders and managers often get brought, well, Susie can't do data entry well. She misses a date of birth all the time. And so we are constantly getting finger pointing, right? But when we do it in the context of our process, there's no finger pointing. It's just, we have this pain point in the process, and it's not really Susie's fault. It's just that the phones are inundating and we get 100 walk-ins a day, and maybe she needs some relief. We don't know, but it's the pain point in the process, not the person. Does that make sense? And I am an open chatter on Zoom, so feel free to chat, thumbs down, thumbs up, hopefully. But what I want you to think about just with this is having your teams work together, having them discuss pain points that relate to the business, their team, and ultimately the patient. So that way you get a well-defined viewpoint of where do you need to improve along the process here. Thanks, Leslie. So at the end, this is kind of what we want to see, right? We want to see our workflow panned out like this, and we want to see our pain points in conjunction with that workflow. And you'll see the dots that I have along the top are the teams touching each part of the process. So you might also see some redundancy in who's touching each of these steps along the way. And this last part of the process here, all this green that you see is billing. And what I've found interesting in doing this with other practices is most of our teams don't understand truly the back end part of billing and how many steps there are on the billing side. We all have this viewpoint of like, we deliver, we send to bill, and we've got amazing billers and fairies that handle the rest of that, and we don't have to think about it. If you took one thing away this week from compliance part of this education, it's get your team involved in the compliance part of your business. Get your admin involved, get your clinicians involved, have them understand what it truly takes to fight a RAC, an ALJ, or any level of appeal in your business, what clinical documentation has to look like, what the data entry has to look like on the front end, because everything that we don't do on the front end, it all lands in billing as a pain point. So again, we had a lot of great ideas this week. Talk to your team about the process before you start to implement these great ideas, because you'll find that if you don't know your process, you're just creating another pain point for your team by sticking something shiny and new in place. Wait, we've got some chats going on. Hold on now. Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks, Leslie. All right there. So next, you've got your pain points down. You've established your baseline. You can't tackle Rome in one day. Pick one area to improve. It does not matter the size of your practice. It doesn't matter if you have a project manager / COO in your business to move this project along, one project at a time. And I say that because you need to gain traction. You need to gain some wins in your office with process improvement, building your culture towards a process improvement culture, and trying to tackle 5 or 6 at once is going to slow you down to hit those small wins. So now you're like, okay, we've got our workflow. How do we get there? This is the fun part for me of telling you how to get there. So the next step is actually taking these ideas and putting them into action. And I have enough time, so I'm actually going to pull up a planner board in just a second and show you guys how to quickly and easily plan some projects in your office without recreating the wheel. And I also have a template, and what I'm going to do right now while I've got this slide up is I'm going to drop my project planning template if I can. Oh, no, maybe I can. It has to link it from my OneDrive. All right, we're going to email out a template for you guys. I've got a project planning template. It's a 2-page template, and it just walks you through how to plan a project in your practice. And it's not overdone. It's not a 10-page like PowerPoint presentation with a, business synopsis at the end. Keep it simple. So every project needs to have a scope. Your scope is going to tell your boss, your manager, your coworkers, your whole team why you're doing what you're doing. It's going to keep the vision of the project kind of in the forefront. If you don't have a vision and you don't have a goal, you will find that your projects will just meander along because somebody will squirrel over here and squirrel over there. And before you know it, your project is 3 months past where you wanted to be because you're going off on tangents. So the scope, hands down, one of the most important thing. The next thing is a timeline. So, let's say you want to create a billing checklist like Kelly showed on Wednesday. All right, well, maybe in our practice with our team and the time that we have right now and our resources, we think that's going to take a month. Put that down. Maybe you're trying to build something else and it's a 3-month project. Or if you have a hard date, let's say you're doing your ABC re-credentialing, that's a project in itself. You need to know that hard date. And then who are the teams that are going to be a part of this project? I'm going to definitely protect our clinicians here. Like we have to make sure that clinicians are involved on an educational level, but chances are they are not going to be doers of a lot of the project. Not to say that, hey, if you're building like a L-coding template system, they should have involvement there, right? But definitely don't make your team so broad that you have too many cooks in the kitchen, and make sure everybody knows their role. And then understand the risks of this project, or if there are alternatives out there, don't go recreating the wheel. If there are tools and systems out there for you to buy that will fit right into the process that you need it to fit into, no need in recreating the wheel. And then how are you going to monitor that project? Through weekly WIP meetings, through weekly Teams meetings, etc. And then what resources are you creating or educational tools are you creating to keep that informational flow going in your practice? So what I want you guys to do real quick is if somebody wants to chat me real quick, anybody, what are some things that this week you took away from some of the meetings that you want to implement into your practice? And while you're doing that, I am going to share this screen here. And let's just see if anybody has something they're like, show me how to plan this. Essentially what I want is, what ideas did you have that you're wondering how to plan in your practice? And if I don't get anything, I will plan something right here for you guys. Oh, how to implement a new note template. Oh, I love that one. All right. So this is my planner board. And I've used Office 365 for my teams. Guys, you can use Trello, you can use an Excel sheet, like use the tool you have. If you are a company with, I don't know, less than 4 offices, use the tool you have. If you're a company with 4 or more offices and you are constantly in project and business development mode, then I'd say, look at other project management tools, but this any tool that you currently have, whether it's Office 365 or Google platform, chances are you can use something within that without having to buy something in your practice, okay? So I've got Planner Board. I created a new board called AOPA Sample Project. I threw some tasks up here just so you guys could see. So one of the ones that we got in our chat here was how to create a new note template. So we're going to do new note template. And we're going to add that task. So it's on my project board here, and I keep my project board simple. I've got projects that are in the, ideation phase, then they move to planning when we're going to put them into action, then they go to progress and they go done. And we can have multiple projects going on at the same time, but if you're new to this, remember, you're picking one idea and moving it forward. So our new note template, we're going to open up that note. You can assign team members from here. I've only got me in my system right now. That's okay. And then you can label it. So I have a few labels. This is definitely going to be a patient-driven goal, right? Like this is going to help us streamline our patient care process. It's also probably beneficial for the business because if we have good notes, that's going to help us on the business side as well. So then we've got in our project bucket. We haven't started yet. Maybe this is an important project because we're getting hit with a lot of audits on knee braces. I'll just throw that out there. So when do we want to start this? Well, let's say we'll start it Monday. We need this by the end of the month. Okay. And then any notes in here. So this is where we start just throwing sticky notes on a wall. Like, hey, we need one for knee orthoses. We need it for TLSOs because we're getting hit by that. So you see how it starts to like everybody's throwing in ideas. So then we add our checklist item. Well, what's the first thing in creating a note template that we'd want to do? Honestly, we probably need to scrub our templates to see what we have in our system and what we're replicating, and if we can use something from an old template and delete other ones. And are they under 10 different people's names in our office? Do we need to kind of clean up our template process before we even create a new template? So we probably need to scrub our template. We need to form a team. Which clinicians want to be involved in this? Not all our clinicians probably see off-the-shelf devices, so we need to see which teams need to be involved. Let's see what else. We need to probably download our tag system. So each EMR has a different way of tagging things within a note. We probably need to download that tag system so we know exactly what we're tagging in our note. We need to create the note. And then we need to add the note to the system. I'm just shorthanding here. And we need to test and get feedback. Okay, so quick little way of doing this, but you do need to think through the steps. And this feedback step, again, is one that's often left out. We get it into action, and then we let it go, and we move on to another project. And then what happens is you guys create another template for a different device, but you didn't get feedback on the previous one. And if there's any errors in the previous one, we're just spinning our wheel again. So make sure you don't forget the feedback one. Another cool thing about Office 365 is that you can add, so if you see my documents here, you can attach documents to this form here. So if somebody's working off a document that's in your system, we can easily add it here and work from here. So that is our card there. And if I close that out, it's there. So now you see I'm going to move this into planning. And then once our stuff starts to get scheduled, we can also see our schedule from here of like how long these projects are going to take. So now I have 2 projects overlapping. I'm not adding anything else to my workflow here. That's enough for my practice in doing 2 projects at once. And we're just going to make sure we get through these till the end of the month. So any questions about project planning or tasking things out, holding teams accountable, anything like that before I jump back to the presentation and wrap things up? All right, we're going to take silences as a clue there. Okay, so like I just said previously, once you've picked your project, you've put it into planning phase, you want to remeasure and iterate off of that. I think one of the things that we struggle with once we get done with the project is like we release it and we move on. But business improvement, process improvement, project improvement, whatever you want to call it, is a constant state of flux. And so you are constantly going to look at these things and remeasure and iterate your projects or simple things that you put into action at least 90 days after implementation. Look back at it, learn from it, and then apply those lessons learned to your next project. And going back to our process flow discussion, I recommend looking at your process flow at least once a year. There are a lot of things that shift your process. It's every time you onboard a new team member, your process shifts. Every time the insurance company changes something, and that happens often, our processes shift. And so you're constantly needing to look at those to make sure they're efficient, they're effective, and all of your cylinders are humming in the same direction, right? Some tips for continuous improvement. You have to create the culture around that. If you have team members, and we all have them, and Lord knows I was one of them for a very long time, change is hard, especially like when you nail down a process and you're like, oh man, this is working well, and something throws it off, and like you feel that resistance. You have people who are resistant to change. So moving your team members' mindset from that kind of all or nothing mindset to this growth mindset is going to be a huge part of keeping continuous improvement in your office. And it's a huge part of your culture. So if your team members don't have a growth mindset, you're not going to be able to do a lot of these projects. And figure out a cadence for upholding these things. So are they weekly meetings with your staff? Are they monthly team meetings? How are you retraining your team as you put these things into action and assessing your team? And then you have to have a knowledge base. I don't know how many practices we have stepped into, and I'm saying we with OMP Insight, KG Simple Solutions, where we have stepped into, and the knowledge is right here in the billers and the auth department. And that is very scary, especially in this climate. We've got a lot of turnover. We've got a lot of people, finding different things to do. That knowledge has to get out of heads and into a knowledge base in your practice. And you can do this with the tools that you have. Again, it can be Excel. It can be something fun like SharePoint. It could be a Word document or a Google Sheet, or it could be videos. But start getting that knowledge from your team members into a knowledge base. And that'll help you with your special projects, because then you'll have different resources to pull from. And with that, I am wrapping up 2 minutes early. So Joy, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jess. So yeah, we will ask if there are any questions for Jess. You can pop those in the chat. Also, we have Kelly and Michelle on from earlier in the week, as well as several other folks from the OMP Insight team. So if you have any questions about anything related to compliance or ethics, I think you've got a good group to pose those to. So encourage you to drop those in the chat. We're happy to stay on and address them. So we'll give people a few minutes to see if they have any questions. And if any of the presenters have anything that they want to add from their presentations or anything else from this week, we'll definitely love to hear that. It's a Friday, so there are no questions, even though I'm if you have questions at a later date, definitely feel free to email those to AOPA and we can pass them along. And like I've said throughout the week, we will be sending around recordings and slides and other resources, so you guys can go back and access everything that was presented this week. All right, well, I am not seeing any question. Oh, here we have a question. Of course, as soon as you say that, you always get a question. So thank you. Here, we'll read this. Can you talk about what kind of audit services each consultant offers, like individual? Yeah, that's a great. I would thank you for that question. I would love if you all want to talk about the services you offer so that folks have a better sense of that. I guess we can start with Jess and then go to Kelly and then Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Laura, for that question. So I don't do auditing services. I leave that to our friends, KG Simple Solutions and OMP Insight, because they do a phenomenal job at this. My services more lie in the process improvement, training and onboarding, and then helping businesses like move these special projects forward and kind of being a contract project manager. Yeah, that's my business.
I do kind of a bit of everything. A lot of the implementation, like Jess said, of the process improvement. If you're struggling in any billing or AR, or you want to learn how to implement those tools that 365 offers. We're really big into 365 Planner, any BI analytics, SharePoint, building out SharePoint resources. So we dabble in a bit of it all. I think the audit specialist is OMP Insights, but we do that as well.
Yeah, I can speak to some of what we do regarding auditing. We try to customize it based on what your needs are, what your concerns are, pain points. Maybe it's the reason for the audit is a result of an external audit from a payer, and that's what's triggering it. Maybe you just want to determine the health of your overall business. We really try to sit down and have a conversation with you to determine what your needs are so we can customize the audit or any other services that we might be offering you specific to what your needs are. But regarding audits, we like to come in and take a sampling of a wide variety of claims, incorporating all of your clinicians, all of the devices that you dispense, and a wide sampling of the different payers that you work with, and get a full feel of how your processes are working and how that's playing out in the form of your claims. What would happen? How would we review those claims if we were an actual auditing entity with control over whether or not that claim is paid or recouped, and provide you with some solid feedback on what our opinion is on whether that claim should be paid or not, and our educational recommendations in regards to areas of improvement, some services we might be able to offer to help with that. We can also provide additional resources that you can take and implement into your own practice to improve upon those processes and things of that nature. So, you know, our services are kind of broad and wide, but that's mostly because we want to customize it based on what your unique needs are.
And I can just speak, AOPA works very closely with all three of these entities, and they're a great tool and resource. AOPA also, of course, has our own coding reimbursement experts, Joe McTurnan and Devin Bernard, as well as the coding and reimbursement committee. So we're certainly here as a resource for AOPA members. So you really do have a lot at your disposal should you need any support. All right, are there any other questions we have for today or this week? All right, well, I am now not seeing any more. So thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you again to our speakers. It was a great to have everybody participate, and we look forward to helping you this year and then seeing you guys again next year for Compliance and Ethics Week. Thanks so much, everybody.